Hey, Run Try Bike community, welcome to the 127th episode of the Run Try Bike Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Now, before we get started with today's show, I want to remind you that you can find this show along with others on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network wherever you get your podcast shows. That includes Apple, Spotify, iHeart Music, Amazon Music, and YouTube Music, and more. You will also get shows including Running Tales with Craig Lewis, Beyond the Finish Line with Joe Harden, Food Fight Friday at the Aid Station with Adam Lee and myself, as well as What's in Your Earbuds with Om Gandhi and Joe Harden. And lastly, Fiery Embers, hosted by either myself or Om Gandhi. And you get these wherever you get your podcast. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review so that we can keep these amazing guests coming on and providing you with inspiration and motivation from everyday athletes like yourself, as well as tips from experts in the fields of nutrition, sports psychology, and coaching. Today, we have Pat Spencer, who is a longtime friend of Run, Try, Bike. Pat is a mental health skills coach for endurance athletes, but it doesn't end there. She's also a gravel cyclist, a wife, a cat owner, and a scuba diver, which is fascinating to me. She's looking to help you build your confidence, resilience, and mindset. And without further ado, let's bring Pat onto the show. Hey, Pat, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm much better now that I get to chat with you for the next handful of minutes.
I know this is a great way for me to end my days talking with you. This is like, I always love our conversations.
Me too. For those of you who don't know, Pat and I work closely together on her newsletter. We chat once a month, and oftentimes I would say, and maybe you would disagree with me, 70% of the time we're talking about life, which includes sports, of course, and then the other 30% of the time we talk about the newsletter.
Exactly. Now we're always talking about life, what races we've done, what training we're doing. I don't know, what food we love.
Speaking of food, let's get this out of the way first, because this is either going to be a really excellent interview or it's going to get cut short really fast. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
I actually am a yay, but no ham. Like just, I like the flavor of the pineapple.
Yes. Okay. I can respect that.
You know,
I can respect that. I get people who come on the show and they're like, oh, I love pineapple on pizza as long as it has jalapeno and ham and bacon and 97 other ingredients. And I'm like, so you don't actually like pineapple on pizza. You just like it with amongst a number of other things. But you're
no,
straight up
I love pineapple. I'll eat pineapple on pizza. I'll eat, I'll grill pineapple and put it on either a turkey or a veggie burger. You know, I'll put pineapple in my protein smoothie after working out. I love pineapple. So
I got an email or a direct message on Instagram from Oregon dad Josh Cronin, who must follow a series by this chef who puts all sorts of things on pizza to test them out, really. And one of them he had was orange segments. So do you think you could put orange on a pizza and enjoy it?
I do like, I prefer tangerines to oranges.
Okay.
And there's so many different types of oranges. You know, is it like one of the more bitter types of oranges? Is it like a blood orange? I really need more information before I can give you that. Because literally there's like, I actually have no idea how many types of oranges, but there's more than I ever knew. I mean, is it a navel orange? Like, what are we talking?
This question got way more complicated than I thought.
Give me the halo tangerines. Maybe put that on it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm willing to try it. Salt, sweet, it's all good.
Oh my goodness. No.
I'm going to create
no?
controversy and say that my favorite topping on pizza is something you can't really get here in the US. I love tuna fish on my pizza.
What?
I know. We're now no longer friends. I hear you. I get it. But when I lived overseas, I lived in Tunisia, North Africa for a few years in my 20s. And the first time they put tuna on my pizza, I was like, what is this?
Okay, but hold on. Was it like straight tuna, or was it like you would get here on a tuna fish sandwich, like with globs of mayonnaise and stuff?
No, straight tuna. But it was like canned tuna, but you know, straight tuna. It's even better with fresh tuna, but yeah, tuna. And then they would also put a fried egg on the pizza. That was a bridge too far. I tried it. But I do love, and I think you can get it in Europe as well. And I've had it in Bonaire where I've had tuna on my pizza, and it's pretty good.
What about fried eggs on burgers? Because I've had one in Spain when I was in my meat eating days, and the fried egg on a burger was fantastic.
I'm not going to say no. I mean, I'm a menopausal woman. The more protein, the better. Um, but I also I don't eat beef, so I'm not going to have it like on a regular burger. I might have it on a turkey burger. I'm not sure how it would go on a veggie burger. Not quite sure of that taste and that the consistency, but hey, I'll try it.
If it's like a Beyond Burger or an Impossible Burger, it'd probably be okay because that, I mean, strangely enough, it really does taste like a regular beef burger. So it might work.
Right.
But we're not here to talk about food, although we could definitely do that for at least an hour.
Oh, I could.
We, yeah, we want to talk about getting your mind in gear, which is your business in helping athletes literally get their mind in gear, right?
Mhm.
Um, so one of the things that I love discussing is the mental aspect of sport. I think the difference between success and not success, I don't want to say failure, on race day is the mental ability to overcome hurdles and struggles.
Mhm.
How do you work with athletes to help them enhance their mental capabilities so that when they're faced with an obstacle on race day or even in training, they're able to get around it?
Right. So that's like a really huge question of how I work with them. And where I always start is what is it that they want to achieve? What's their goal? Um, and from that, I'm also going to look at what's the purpose or the meaning of the goal. So if the goal is to, I don't know, finish an Ironman in X amount of time, let's say, that's great. That's a really good goal. It's measurable. We can look and see, did you do this? But then I want to know why. Why an Ironman? Why that time? Why this race now, basically? Um, and then
What
from
happens if
that,
what
sorry, go
happens
ahead.
if an athlete's why just doesn't seem strong enough to get them through for let's use Ironman, 16, 20 weeks, sometimes a year's worth of training, and then the race. Is there a way to determine how strong of a why an athlete has?
I think some of that is going to be through talking with them because I don't necessarily know if I can. I don't know if I know what I can do in 6 months from now. Um, really what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to actually contradict myself immediately where I'm talking about goal setting of a few months down the road, but really trying to stay present in the moment. So why is the why today? Like why, my why is often I want to use my body to its fullest capability now, while I'm as fit as I am, you know. Um, and that oftentimes will get me through. But quite honestly, I don't know what 6 months from today holds. I don't know. Is there a family situation that's arisen that kind of has taken my focus away? Um, so oftentimes we'll work with the athletes of what is your goal for 6 months from now or a year from now, but what's the why of today, and then what's today presenting you? And then none of us have a crystal ball. None of us can predict the future, but many of us can make some general predictions of what's family life going to look like. If you have kids in school, you kind of know what December might look like, you know. So part of what I would do is be talking about, okay, so this goal is a year away. Let's look at this calendar and let's very realistically look at, do you have the time to train?
Yeah,
Um,
that's huge, isn't it?
yep.
That's huge.
And a big part of goal setting when I'm working with athletes is looking at, so what is the goal? What's the why of the goal? But then do they have the skills, the tools, the opportunity, and the supports to achieve that goal?
Can it be really difficult for you to work with an athlete in today's world where going longer, going faster, doing more seems to get more attention than doing the progressive step? For example, you start with a sprint triathlon, go to an Olympic distance triathlon, go to a 70.3, and then go to an Ironman. Because the way I'm thinking about it is if I know I can get the training in for a sprint triathlon, and let's say that's 5 hours a week,
Mhm,
then the next season I go and do an Olympic triathlon and I've got to train 7 or 8 hours a week.
mhm.
And then the next season I go to a half Ironman and it's 12 hours a week and I'm stretched so thin that the idea of doing 15 to 20 hours a week for an Ironman would tell me something has to change.
Mhm.
So do you see it being, is your role in helping athletes develop this mental strength today more difficult than it was, say, 10 years ago when everything wasn't on social media? And I mean everything.
Mhm. Well, specifically for triathlon, since that was my background, I did triathlon starting in 2007, and I did them up to 2016. So even then, before, like, yes, there was social media, but it wasn't certainly as powerful it is today. There still was a push to do more. Athletes would say, "Oh, you're a triathlete. Have you done Ironman?" So specifically with triathletes, it's always been a challenge to help, I guess, validate that a sprint triathlon is a triathlon. You are a triathlete if you do a sprint triathlon. You're also a triathlete if you do an Ironman,
Right.
but sprint does not diminish. Like that's not, it's not less than.
Right.
Um, so again, that's going back to oftentimes looking at what is the why. Is the why, well, because everybody else is doing it? And, or is it, I want to get that M dot tattoo on my ankle? Which can be actually a very powerful driver for some of the triathletes. Um, but if we can look at that why and we can look at the goal, we can very realistically look at, okay, do you have the skills? Like if somebody comes and says, I want to do an Ironman, I'm like, cool, let's talk about it. So let's talk about the skills. Do you know how to swim? No. Okay. We need to back up a little bit then.
Right.
Do you have the tools? Do you have the bike? And for triathlon, you don't need a expensive tri bike. You can do a triathlon on a road bike.
Louder for the people in the back.
Yeah, let me repeat that. You do not need aero bars. Okay, you look cool on the aero bars. I get it. I had that bike myself, but go out there, ride with what you got. You
Mhm.
know, if you got, quite honestly, if you got a Schwinn, ride the Schwinn. Get
Hey,
out there, try it.
shout out to Rose Scoville, who had an article written about her by Holly Sick for our website, and it literally started with a Schwinn. I mean, that's how she got started with this stuff, and it's a powerful story, right? Use what you got, and if you love it, then upgrade. But to pour in a lot of money into something you don't know if you're really going to enjoy and like for a long time, it
Mhm.
makes no sense. I'm going back to doing my first 70.3 from 2017. At least that's the plan today. And I have
Mhm.
a road bike. I have
Oh,
no interest in spending $7,000, 8,000 on a TT bike that if I don't actually enjoy this 70.3, I don't know that I'm going to go back to it. But
right.
you know what I do enjoy doing? Climbing all the hills that are around my house that, there's a 600-foot climb over the course of about 3 miles here. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just vertical and it's
Mhm.
a challenge. And I enjoy doing that. And having a TT bike wouldn't really allow me to get up that, for lack of a better phrase, mountain, let's say.
Right. Right. But also, so those are the tools, and you use what you have. You don't need. I don't even know what they're called. The Nike Vaporflies. Is that the carbon plated shoes? You don't
Sure.
need those. You what I have my Hokas. I don't have them with me. I'm in my office, but wear those. Wear what you have the first time. Now, if you like it, I do suggest upgrading if it's something
Mhm.
you want to continue doing. But the biggest thing I think that most athletes don't give a realistic consideration to is, again, it's skills, tools, but opportunity. And opportunity is time. So do you have the time to actually commit to training and to recovery? And a lot of athletes I'll talk to, and quite honestly, I was guilty of this myself, was like, of course I'm going to recover. I have work all day. I'll be sitting in my office for 8 hours. I got nothing but recovery. Meanwhile, work's very stressful. It's a different type
Yes.
of stress, but it's still stress.
Yep. Maria
Um,
Simone, who coached me to my second Ironman at Arizona in 2012, through our training and coaching, she said to me, and it's a lesson I've held on to and passed along to athletes I coach, is that stress is stress.
mhm,
Your body doesn't know the difference between running, for 45 minutes or dealing with family stress, financial stress, work stress, friend stress. Like it just doesn't know. It goes into this situation that it has to recover from. And
mhm,
so you're right. A lot of people will wake up at 4 in the morning, get on little sleep, go run, 8 to 10 miles, and
Mhm.
then go to work thinking, well, I'm recovering during work. Meanwhile, deadlines are flying around them. Bosses are angry about X, Y, and Z. Or if
Mhm.
they're in sales, they're not closing deals. And that just adds more and more stress to their life.
Right. Or maybe they're a medical professional who's or a teacher who's actually
Mhm.
on their feet all day. They're like,
Right.
"I'm gonna recover at work." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're getting more steps in during these 8 hours than you do on your run."
I had an athlete, I was coaching to her first Ironman, and she was like, "Oh, I recovered so well today. I went and mowed my lawn," and she had a big yard. It took her like 2 hours. I'm like, "That's not recovery. You're pushing a mower for
Mhm.
2 hours." Like,
Right.
ass down, feet up. That's recovery.
Yep. Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about, speaking of recovery, is you have a workbook on your website that's called 3P2R, and that discusses plan, prepare, perform, recover, and review.
Mhm.
And I have read it a number of times as we've worked together, and for lack of a better phrase, or maybe this is spot on, it's genius. I think what the 3P2R program does is it helps to remove anxiety and stress from athletes
Mhm.
as they prepare for their race. So without me bungling the description of it, help the audience understand what 3P2R is and why you came up with this concept.
Right. So I'm gonna start with the second question, which is why I came up with it, which is what you just touched on. It having good preparedness before race day helps to decrease race day nerves. And the other part of it is that part of, and I'm going to go into just a second, but part of the planning and preparation is some of the mental mindset stuff, which we talk about what ifs. Um, and if you can have a plan, even having a plan for when things go awry, is it takes away decision making. Because something I don't think a lot of people think about is that yes, when we're out there doing an ultra, for example, which I've never done, so I can't really speak, but I know you can. Of There's a lot of physical fatigue. Like your body hurts, your body is tired. But something I don't think we talk a lot about is the cognitive fatigue, the decision fatigue that comes along with it. So what 3P2R does is it helps us go into the race less anxious, feeling a bit more confident and a bit more prepared, but it also takes away, or at least helps us pre-decide, or in therapy we call it coping ahead. So planning ahead for when something might go wrong. So the 3P2R, like you described, the P's are plan, prepare, and perform, and then the two R's are recover and review. And the reason I've broken out plan and prepare is I actually look at them as two separate aspects. The planning is more of this cognitive, it's more of a thought process. It's the planning is looking at what is the weather, what's the terrain, how long, what are the logistics, and it's thinking through all of that and saying, okay, it's going to rain, I'm going to need my rain jacket, or it's going to be hot, I need this, or you know, and in it I talk about breaking down like the weather, the logistics, your kit, and nutrition, and then the mental side. And so if you can think about all of this ahead of time, you can write it out. And in the workbook I have where you can write things out, and I ask questions of, again, what is the weather, for example? And then we move on to preparing. And preparing is where you actually gather the stuff. Preparing is where you actually go to your closet and get the rain jacket or get the special type of running shoes or whatever it happens to be. Um, and then the performing, that's pretty self-explanatory. You get out there and you do it. You're
Right.
on the bike, you're on the run, you're on the swim, you're doing the triathlon. But during that performing, you're also handling whatever comes your way. And it's checking in mentally. It's am I sticking to my race plan? Am I sticking to my pace? Am I sticking to my power? It's okay. I got a flat tire, but I've already thought about that flat tire. Because in the planning, I'm going to think about what are some things that can go wrong.
Right.
I'm going to try not to go super catastrophe, but kind of the normal stuff. Okay, I could get it as a biker. I'm a gravel cyclist primarily now. I could get a flat. I
Right.
could break a chain. Um, I could fall. So what am I going to do in those situations?
But I think that even if you don't think about catastrophe, the fact that you're planning for these other things allows you to react to catastrophe. So, for example, I mentioned Rose Scoville. earlier, she just finished doing 70.3 Michigan. And I read yesterday or this morning that while she was riding, the pedal came out of the crank
Oh
and
my
was
goodness.
stuck to her shoe, right? That's catastrophe.
Yep.
That is catastrophe. She was able to get it back in and finish the race, but what I'm getting at is, had you thought about what happens if I have a flat, or what happens if I drop my water bottle, or what happens if A, B, and C, right? You've come up with solutions to all of those problems that if you run into a scenario in which that happens, you know how to problem solve because you've already been thinking about problem solving.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and more than likely you have tools out there for at least as a cyclist, if
Right.
I'm thinking about what happens if I get a flat, I know I have, my Stan's darts or my bacon strips. I know I have, like a CO2 cartridge or my bike pump with me. Um, and you just kinda go from there. But because you've already thought it through, you're able to not waste that energy. So, like, if I didn't think through a flat and I got a flat, I'd be like, "Okay, what do I do? How do I do?" I'd probably be freaking out, not as calm as that. I'd be like, "Oh my god, what do I do?" But but because I thought it out, my brain has also already planned for it.
Yeah.
And although there's actually some contradictory research on this, a lot of people will say that if you imagine something, your brain thinks you're actually doing it, which is why visualization works. So
Right.
if I'm saying, okay, if I get a flat, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull over. I'm going to get off my bike. I'm going to find the puncture. I'm going to spin the wheel so the sealant will work. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to put a bacon strip in it. Then I'm going to pump it full of air, and then I'm going to be on my merry way. And because my brain's already rehearsed it, it's ready for it.
Right.
Even if I haven't had to actually fix a flat in real life, my brain is now ready for it.
Right. And chances are, while you're planning through this process, you've watched YouTube videos on how to do all these things, and so you can then go to your word, visualize yourself now doing this stuff
Mhm.
and
Yep.
making it easy. So then let's talk about the two R's: recover and review. Now.
Right. So recover is well, it's recovery, and everybody is going to recover slightly differently. But the big thing is getting nutrition back into you. It's drinking that protein shake. It's eating whatever the post race food is. It's really trying to, because we've used more than we could take in,
Right.
with the exception of maybe a sprint triathlon. If you've eaten and stuff, maybe you're okay there. But for any other one, you're going to need to top off again. Um, you're also going to want to rehydrate. So
Mhm.
it's getting not just water, but some type of electrolyte drink in you. Um, it's getting off of your feet. It's maybe going for a massage if that's something that's feasible for you. Um, when I did Rebecca's Private Idaho last week, 2 weeks ago, friends of mine had Normatec boots. I've never tried those. Oh my god, were they heaven? Um, I'm like saving my pennies now for those. Um,
They do work magic.
they really do, but that's what the recovery is. It's allowing your body to heal. And the recovery, depending on the event, can be one day, it can be multiple days.
Right.
Recovery from an ultra is going to be very different than recovery from a 10K, for example.
So let me ask you this: when you're working with an athlete, they come to you and you're working through the process and their why and everything else. Do you often talk to them about this idea of like compounding events? Meaning you finish your event, you're in your recovery phase. Don't be in such a rush to get to the next training block and the
Mhm,
next event. Burnout, injury. I mean, I could give you all the
mhm.
negatives really fat here on this list. Is that another piece of the conversation that you have with athletes?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of times like, okay, so I have like some specific examples in my head right now. It's like, okay, so I just did this half Ironman, but I got a marathon in 2 weeks. I'm like, what? Why? And they're like, and then after that, I've got, I'm going to do an Ironman. I'm like, what? Why? And uh, honestly, if I tell somebody no, if I'm like, oh, don't do that, they're not going to listen to me. And quite honestly, it's just going to repel them and push them away.
Mhm.
But if we look at what's the reason that you're doing these, and also monitoring actually how you feel. How do you feel going into it? How do you feel coming out of it? Um, Very few people will not do it just simply because I say don't do it. most people I've worked with after they've done, I don't know, the half marathon or the half Ironman and then a marathon 2 weeks later, and then they're feeling like down and bedraggled and, they got the flu and everything, um, then they'll listen. I'm like, is there a way to space out the events a bit more? Um,
Yeah, and we just had an article on our site from Dr. Aaron Ayala from Scatty Sports Psychology about the post-race blues, and making sure you have a plan for after the event is over. And we had another article a few years ago on a similar topic by Joanne Ballard about making sure you have a post-race plan.
mhm,
That's not to say, because look, I've done it. I'm terrible at reading the fine print on the athlete guide, and by fine print, I mean the athlete guide.
mhm,
And so I found out that a race I had registered for, the Coldwater Rumble, was not a Western States qualifier. And so I had to I didn't have to. I chose to register for Rocky Raccoon, which was 2 weeks later, so that I can get my Western States qualifier because travel was much easier to get there and everything else from where I lived. And so I ran two 100-mile races 14 days apart. Do I recommend that? Absolutely not. If I was thinking clearly and had read the athlete guide in advance, prior to registration, then I wouldn't have done it that way. So, I mean, these things can happen, but, in reality, for most of us, this is a hobby,
mhm.
and there's no reason to pile event on top of event on top of event on top of event, because it can and will lead to burnout and or injury at some point.
Yep. Yeah. No, I've been there. I did a number of I think I did 5 Ironman in 4 years or something, and then I can't even tell you how many 70.3s kind of squeezed in there. And then in 2016, I got really sick, and I trained for Ironman Mont Tremblant. Really long story short, I didn't finish, but and I didn't finish because physically I couldn't. I physically there was nothing left in me. But Ironman Mont Tremblant is up in the Quebec province in Canada. And so my wife and I had planned to do, I think, a week, maybe 10 days traveling around Quebec after the race. And we go to Quebec City 5 days after the race, and they're having the Quebec half marathon. And I said, honey, isn't this great? Look at this. What timing? We're here and they still have entries. It's the half marathon and the marathon. I said, should I do the marathon? She's like, absolutely not. I said, "How about the half marathon? I'm trained." She's like, "You were like, oh, you collapsed." I'm like, "No, but it's fine. It's been 5 days." So I did the half marathon and it sucked. Don't recommend. It's a great race. I recommend the Quebec half marathon. I don't recommend doing it in the physical state that I was in.
This really is another example of the experts also needing coaches and insight and help from others too,
Right.
right? The right move would have been to listen to your wife and skip this half marathon, but it just shows you, right? We're all humans, and we're all gonna make decisions, and having some outside forces to talk to is going to help shape that decision making process.
Right.
So the last part of the 3P2R before we forget about it is the review. And what part of the 3P2R, like where does this come into play for the event you just handled and going forward into another event or another training cycle down the road?
Yeah, I think review is actually key. For anybody that's done more than one race, I think review is probably the most important part. It might even be more important, in my opinion, than perform. Um, because it's in review that we have a chance to really look at what went well, why did it go well, how do we replicate that, but also what didn't go well, why didn't it go well, and what do we need to change. And I like to break a race down into sections. I don't care if it's a 5K or an ultra. I want to break it down into sections because no race is all good or all bad. And, if it's just for ease, triathlon, it's pretty easy. There's swim, bike, and run and transitions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 5 different areas. So we have the swim, transition, bike, transition, run, finish. How did each one go? And then you can break it down even smaller. How did the start of the swim go? How did the exit of the swim go? How was the first 5 miles of the bike? How was the last 10 miles of the bike? and really looking at what went well, both physically, nutritionally, mindset wise, gear wise, mechanically, and really looking at, again, just what went well, what didn't go well, how to replicate and how to learn, and then you take that forward. Which is why I think my story about the Quebec half marathon is actually kind of funny, because I've learned from that, and now I can take that and use it. I'm hoping somebody's listening that's not going to do the same thing I did. Um, or we'll do it and say, I'm going to do it better than her, and then not do it better than me and end up in the same boat,
Yeah.
which I don't hope, actually. But so,
I mean, would you say that this 3P2R could either replace a planning checklist or work in conjunction with a planning checklist? And by planning, what I'm getting at is gear, right? So if I'm going to go do an Ironman, I need to make sure I have swim goggles, tinted and clear. I need to make sure I have my kit. I need to make sure I have my wetsuit if it's legal or at least optional. I need to make sure now I got a bike. So do I have my bike and all of these things? So there's a gear planning checklist. Does 3P2R work in conjunction with that, or do you also have a gear planning checklist within 3P2R?
So within 3P2R, I do have a gear planning checklist, and it's also one that the athlete can add to based on what their event is. So I'm not necessarily going to replace it, because there's plenty of good ones out there. There's plenty of gear planning checklists that athletes have made up for themselves. I just think mine gives you a different way of looking at it, a different way of thinking about it, and really trying to capture what you need on that day. Because what you need on a 50-mile rainy ride is going to be different than what you need on a 100-mile hot and sunny ride.
100%.
So a simple checklist doesn't always capture it. So I do think it does replace it, but can work in conjunction at the same time. But it really is its own and allows the athlete to make it their own.
So you're 2 weeks past RPI, Rebecca's Private Idaho, for those that don't know. Where are you in the review component of the 3P2R? Have you gone back and gone through your event and written down places that were successful and things you learned, as well as things that were not as successful and what you've learned?
Yeah. Now, we are 2 weeks out from RPI, and I did the stage race. So it was 3 days of racing. And so I actually broke each one down and reviewed, and then did kind of overall review. Where I am is overall, like big overall grade, like end of term type of grade. I give it an A. I think I did pretty well. I handled the stressors. I know, I'm excited.
Yeah, you should be.
I handled the stressors that came up. I rode my race, which is what I wanted to do. I'm not injured. I'm not sick. I had a good time with friends. So overall, it gets an A. When I look at some other factors, there's some factors that are out of my control, like weather. So in Idaho, they're having some horrible wildfires. And on our first stage, they test the air quality. There's government people that do AQI and air quality index. And the race guide said anything over, I think, 175 will cancel. Well, we woke up on race morning and the AQI was 500.
Slightly higher.
Yeah, it's like being in the fire itself, basically. So that day got canceled. So I look at that and I say, okay, how do I handle a canceled race? Because a canceled race can be very stressful for athletes. People like, I put all this time, all this money, all this training. I'm fine with what I did. I was like, okay, quite honestly, I was scared of the single track, and now I don't have to race it. And I think I did well. I'm the type of person that normally be like, let's go out and do things. But instead, we sat inside, we watched Netflix, I stayed hydrated. So I give myself an A for that. The next race, quite honestly, didn't quite go my way either. It was 50 miles, so a 50-mile race, so 20 miles out, 5-mile time trial climb, and then 25 miles back.
What?
Yeah. So it's a 20-mile neutral rollout. The AQI at the start was 175. And as I just said, they said they'd cancel if anything like 175 or over. They're like, listen, it's 175, but just even a few feet up the mountain, it's going to be better. We're like, okay, we're going to go.
So it's a rolling neutral start, and then you hit after 20 miles, you hit some fictional second start line,
Yep.
and you're just hammering up the mountain.
Yeah, it's a time trial. So you hit that start line, you get to that point, but everybody stops because they go off in 30-second increments. So it was my chance to catch up with everybody because I'm not the fastest. Um,
A good 20-mile warm up before a 5-mile vertical time trial.
yeah, and the 20-mile warm up was also uphill, but only like between 2 and 3% uphill most of the time. The actual time trial was like 6 or 7%.
What are the last 25 miles like then?
Downhill. But downhill on gravel is a
Not
whole
the
different
same.
beast
Yeah.
because parts of it were deep, like sandy type gravel, parts of it were big chunky gravel, parts of it was smooth champagne gravel. You just didn't know what was going to happen. But the best thing was on the way back down, there's a natural hot spring that everybody stops off at, and you hop in the hot spring
Oh.
and warm up, I guess. Um, so my performance was not what I wanted. So I'm gonna give my performance a good C, maybe. But I raced within myself, and when I got to the time trial part, I was like, "I'm not really feeling it." And I decided I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go as much as I can on the time trial uphill. And at one point, my heart rate got like to 190 or something. I'm like, I don't have much more space for my heart to go. So I kind of sat there, didn't sit there, but I was pedaling, thinking, do I stop, let my heart rate come down, pedal for another 200 yards, stop, let my heart rate come down? Because we're also at elevation. I live at
Right.
sea level. We're now at like 6 or 7,000 feet. I decided to turn around and went back. So I give my mental performance an A because I didn't beat myself up. I made a very well thought out decision. I didn't react to the moment. I just thought about it and then responded. And then day 3, I instead of doing the 102 miles, I did the 56, which was a great decision. Um, Again, I give myself. I'm not the fastest. I'm not going to be on the podium, but I handled a hill really well. I think the first 14 miles are uphill, with 5 of them being very significantly uphill, and you top out at 7,500 feet, I think. Um, yeah. Um,
None of this sounds easy.
It was not easy. None of it was easy. Um, Coming back though, we had to climb that same hill again, like 10 miles of climbing, but it had a stiff headwind the entire time. I'm like, if I stop pedaling, I'm gonna fall over. Like, this is crazy, literally. But I had other people like they would pass me or they'd come up and like, how much farther do we have to the actual hill? I'm like 2 more miles, and we've got the. So I did it, and I give myself an A for that. I stayed on top of my nutrition. I stayed within my heart rate range that we wanted. I wasn't focusing on power because at elevation you heart rate more than power. I followed the plan. So that's where I am with my review. And then I talked to my coach, and we've decided for next year we're focusing on shorter distances. So no big stage races. It's going to be like maybe 60 miles would be my longest race. Um,
So you kind
and
of answered my question because I was going to ask you, like, how do you take this review process and apply it to the future now? And I think you just answered that question in talking to your coach. If you're a self-coached athlete, what kind of steps would you advise them to take if they are finished with the review process of the 3P2R workbook and are now looking at the future? Like what should they be considering and looking at when they review their review, for lack of a better phrase?
right. So first I'd be saying celebrate what you accomplished, like find the celebrations in there. And then if you want to continue racing, and that's actually question number 1 is, do you want to continue racing? It's okay at some point to hang up your bike shoes or your running shoes. Um, but if you want to continue, what are how can you take the lessons from today and apply them? So like last year when I raced, I had a DNF, and it was simply because I didn't train.
Mhm. You don't say.
I'm like,
There's a
yeah, I can do 100
correlation.
miles. Let me just get out there, no training. That didn't work. Um,
It's
so,
rem
so it's like you look and you go, okay, what went well and why? and then a very real look of what didn't go well and why. And that why can be, I didn't put the time in, I didn't put the effort in, I didn't eat on the bike, I didn't drink on the bike, I didn't know my nutrition. So what changes do you need to make?
Right.
And then deciding, okay, do I still want to bike? And if I want to bike, are these 100-mile races what I want to do? Or am I going to get the same joy out of a 60-mile race?
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a story years ago. A friend of mine and I had decided that we wanted to race the fastest half marathon we've ever raced and beat another friend of ours who, out of the three, was at the top of the podium. She was in first place. We were second and third. And we're like, we're going to go for it at this race. We had like 2 weeks of training. Like, so to your point, no training whatsoever. And the gun goes off. And after the first mile, I think we ran like a 6:50 or 6:55 or something. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel bad. After mile 2 was like a 7:01. I was like, holy crap, I think we can do this. We got this. And then by mile 3, like everything just stopped working. 2 weeks of training is not enough to try to run a 1:31 half marathon, folks. Like it just doesn't work that way. I remember at mile 9 just thinking, if I can stay in front of the 150 pace crew, because they were coming up on my tail now. So I wanted to finish in 130, and now I'm racing the 150 pace crew. I was like, oh, I'll be able to make it. But yeah, just to your point is, once that race was over, I did do the review plan, even though I didn't know what a 3P2R was. And the plan was never to do that again. If I'm going to want to race a half marathon PR and get down in the 130 area, I'm going to have to train. I'm going to have to know my nutrition and what I'm putting into my body to get to that point, because otherwise it's going to feel as horrible as it just did.
Right. And you touched on something really important. Like you said, kind of joking, like never again. But then you quickly went to what you are going to do, because never again needs to be replaced with what I would do differently.
Right.
I'm going to, as you said, I'm going to talk to a nutritionist. I'm going to come up with a race plan. I'm actually going to train. So, it really is looking at what didn't go well, doing the never again, and then figure out what do you replace it with. So that's awesome. You did a great job.
Never again are very famous last words for most endurance athletes, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember in 2012, I was 40, and I'll admit I was at a bar having a drink. It was like a Friday. A friend of mine texted me. She's like, "Hey, listen, Todd Murray half is tomorrow. Do you want to do it?" Sure, sounds good.
I'll just sleep in my car right outside the start line.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a huge drinker, so it wasn't like I was drunk or anything, but it was just like, and I was doing like half Ironman and stuff like that, so it went from nothing to that. But I'm like,
Right.
yeah, sure, text me at the bar. I'll show up at the half.
Pat, thank you so much for joining me. Before we get into our rapid fire food questions, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you to find 3P2R? We put the link here into the show already, but where can people find you if they want to bring you on to help them with their mental skills?
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if people did reach out and we could work on their mental skills and figure out how to help them achieve their goals. The best 2 ways to find me are Instagram and my website. And both Insta and my website are the same. They're Getting Your Mind in Gear. But on Insta, it's getting_your_mind. You'll just Google Getting Your Mind in Gear. Or if you go to my website, which is gettingyourmindingear.com, it also has the links. And on my website, I would also love it if you signed up for my newsletter. There's a pop-up that says something like Get Runner PDF, RUNER, which is another technique that I use to help people with essentially emotional regulation. And then you can get that newsletter that Jason helps me out with once a month. So yeah, website and Insta, I think, are the 2 best ways to find me. And I post on Insta every Monday. I do Mindset Mondays. Probably a few pictures of my cats, a lot of pictures of bike riding around New Jersey, and mental tools and skills and stuff.
Yeah, folks, make sure you head over to gettingyourmindingear.com and subscribe to the newsletter. And then also check out 3P2R and Runner. I talk to Pat on a monthly basis, and it's always an education for me from a number of different things. Either I learned something new, or she reminds me of something that I had already learned and forgotten, but now becomes new again. So definitely check out her stuff. It's amazing. Are you ready for our, we call them rapid fire food questions, but feel free to think about the answers if you need to.
All right, bring it. I got it.
Awesome. Oreos. Are you a fan of Oreos? And if so, are you OG Oreo, double stuffed Oreo, Thins, which are really nothing more than a cracker, or the Cakester, which is just a round devil dog?
Okay, I love Oreos. We'll just start there. I make a really wonderful Christmas cookie with Oreos. I do love the double stuffed. What was that?
I'm booking my flight to Jersey right now.
Please do. They're super easy too. It's just Oreos, some cream cheese, and a blend or a food processor, and roll them into balls. And I call them reindeer poop. But anyway, yeah. I do love Oreos. Double stuff all the way. I love the frosting. I like to twist off. My inner child is still there, where I'll kind of scrape it off with my teeth. Yeah, I don't need the Thins. I don't need the cake. And I'll do regular Oreos. I'll do the vanilla type Oreos. I wasn't a few years ago. They had Peeps Oreos around Easter. Not a fan. Didn't like those. It was too sweet.
Why?
I don't know.
We had Jason Fitzgerald on last week. He's the founder of Running Strength. And I asked him this question, and he said the key to his success with Oreos that he loves is he drops the first Oreo into the cup of milk so that it basically disintegrates, so that when he drinks the milk at the end, he gets this rush of cookies and cream to finalize everything. And I thought that was just genius.
Okay, I think I've found something new I might have to try.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I pop them like aspirin. I don't dunk, I don't twist. Everything goes in at once, chew, and give me the next sleeve in that scenario. Are you a fan of licorice?
I'm a sort of fan of licorice.
Sort of fan of red, sort of fan of black, no fan of red, no fan of black.
I like them both. I do like red Twizzlers. We have season tickets to Rutgers football, college football, and Rutgers, their colors are scarlet and white. We have a fan that sits near us that anytime Rutgers scores, they throw red Twizzlers. I love that. I love black licorice. Growing up, the black jelly beans were my favorite.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Good and Plenty's, I still have the song. I mean, the commercial from when I was like 8. I'm in my 50s. I can still. Charlie says, "Love my good and plenty," but we're not going to.
Wasn't Mike and Ike the straight up licorice one too? They were just the black and white.
I like those too.
Yeah.
Yep. But I don't like to overdo licorice. Like, I'm not going to eat an entire bag of black jelly beans. A handful, yes. An entire bag, no.
My bad Rutgers joke was going to be that fan doesn't spend a lot of money on Twizzlers throughout the football season.
Historically, I have not, but we so far have won all of our games this season.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. No, Rutgers, we're going to do well. We're never going to be a Michigan or an Ohio State or now in the Big Ten, Oregon. What the hell? And USC? No, thank you.
I think it's the Big 18 now. I think the conference has 18 teams in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to be on par with the Purdue's, although not really, because did you see last week's game with Purdue? Oh my God, it was so bad. Or like Indiana, they're doing pretty good, or Minnesota. That's kind of the level I want us to be.
Indiana just introduced UCLA to the Big Ten in a big way. They whooped up on them out here.
Oof. That was good.
So you brought up Peeps. Are Peeps a real candy, or are they just terrible marshmallows covered in gold glitter?
Terrible marshmallows covered in gold glitter.
Yes.
Yep.
I know our friend Adina loves them. She swears by them. She even gave me, I'm going to call bad advice, and said to let them go stale. And my first thought process is, so you want me to take something bad and make it worse, and somehow that's supposed to make it good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you.
I tried and it didn't work.
Right.
Candy corn. Is candy corn a real candy, or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
I love candy corn. It might be earwax covered in sugar, but my God, I love it. And those little orange pumpkins also, like the same consistency.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I'm glad you said the same consistency, because and not different taste, because it's the same stuff. It's just in a different mold.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love them.
It's
Again,
amazing.
like one handful. They're too sweet. Like I can't do an entire bag, otherwise I'm sick.
Have you tried this technique? We've been told, or I've been told, that if you have candy corn, you should also have like peanuts with them. So candy corn peanut combination. Have you tried
Oh,
that?
I have not.
So now that's two things you have to try.
Right? So it's candy corn and protein.
Yeah.
Like, where's the wrong? Where's the bad in that?
The wrong is the candy corn. That's the wrong. You could eat your favorite payday bar. Get
I love
the
payday
protein and the sweet right there, and,
Yeah, I
and
love my
skip the
payday
candy corn.
bars.
Creamy or crunchy peanut butter?
Usually creamy. Yeah,
So how do you make a PB&J sandwich? Do you put peanut butter on one slice of bread and jelly on the other and then smash them together? Or do you put peanut butter on one side and jelly on the same and then just fold the other over the top?
Oh, no. Peanut butter on one side, peanut butter on the other side, jelly on
Oh,
one side, jelly on the other side, smash
oh, wow. Almost like a peanut butter and jelly club sandwich without this third slice of bread, though.
Yep.
When you slice it, do you go 2 triangles, 2 rectangles, 4 triangles, or 4 squares?
Usually 2 triangles.
Nice. I'm a 4 triangle guy. My mother taught me that when I was a kid, and it makes me feel fancy, so I eat those 4 triangles with 1 pinky up.
It's like you're having high tea or something with
Exactly. Finger sandwiches, me and the queen.
Exactly. You're like, you don't need cucumber sandwiches. You've got PB&J.
Cucumber sandwiches was on our Food Fight Friday at the aid station a couple of weeks ago, and Adam described it, I would say adequately, as a booger sandwich because the cucumber gets super soft.
Yeah. I don't like cucumbers. Like, it's just gross. Let me ask you this. What's your favorite aid station food?
Probably Oreos if I just need something sweet, right? But I love potatoes, like potatoes at an aid station, whether it's 100-mile, gravel ride or mountain, if you're on mountain bike, or running, like that aid station potato is phenomenal. That salt, oh, so good, so good. But honestly, like just about anything. I did across the years, 50 miler. At one time, they had tofu breakfast burritos, so scrambled tofu, which I ate like 4 of those per lap I was on. They had Oreos, they had the peanut butter and jelly, they had the grilled cheese, just whatever they had when I came around. I was like, that sounds good. Let's eat it.
Right.
But I will say I once fueled an entire 100 essentially on whatever the liquid in my pack was. So Tailwind or Scratch or something of that effect, and 50 Oreos because I couldn't stomach anything else. Like I just could not eat anything else. Nothing tasted well, didn't sit well. And I just had 2 Oreos at every aid station, and there are 25 aid stations throughout the whole entire 100 miler. So it just made the math was easy.
Wow. Now the best aid station food I've ever had was when I did Challenge Roth in Germany. At one aid station, I thought I died and gone to heaven. They had watermelon and they had really good German brown bread. But then what they also had was a bowl of salt that you could dip your bread or your watermelon in.
Yes.
Oh, I was like, can I move in? Like, I'm going so damn slow. I could just stay here. I mean, it's like.
I essentially did that at not Canyons, at Lake Sonoma 50. I got to the mile 37 aid station. It was like 198 degrees. It was so hot. And I just asked the aid station lady if I could pull up a chair in the shade. And she was like, sure. I wound up spending like 35 minutes at this aid station because I just did not want to get out of this shade because it was so hot. And she's like, would you like something to eat? And I was like, yeah, what do you got here? And she offered me, standard fare. And it was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but it had been out in that hot sun for so long. Like the outside of the bread had begun to toast because it was so hot out there. And it was terrible. It was like I would have rather have eaten the dirt that was underneath my feet than eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Red velvet cake. Is red velvet a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
It's chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom, but it tastes damn good. I really like it.
I have to share, I'll email you the video that we got when we interviewed Adam Ruska from Goes Health. I asked him that question, and you could see like his brain churning to answer the question, and then he just laughs for like 30 seconds. And now I'm dying laughing in the show. And then what makes it even better is his accent that comes out when he first starts to talk, because in the clip, it's a 35-second clip. It's me talking, then laughing, and then he finally talks. And his accent is nothing you would expect to come out. And I think it makes it even better. It's just so awesome. I'll have to
That's
share that
awesome.
with you. All right, we know what your favorite candy bar is, but what's your favorite ice cream?
Oh, okay. I think I'm gonna go off script here because it's not technically an ice cream, but I love watermelon sherbet from
Ooh,
Michael's Dairy in New London, Connecticut.
very specific.
Very specific. I just like the taste of it. B, it has so many memories. My grandparents are from New London or lived in New London. And my grandmother, they called me Patty, like, Patty, we're going to take you to get ice cream. And I'd always get watermelon sherbet. And Michael's Dairy is still there. And I was just at my parents' house like last month and went right there. So I love watermelon sherbet.
I love it.
Technically not ice cream. So if you want my favorite ice cream, it is banana ice cream. I don't have a specific place, but I like banana ice cream.
There is a Van Leeuwen's out here near us that does a banana bread pudding ice cream that's vegan and gluten free.
Oh
It's
my.
fantastic.
Okay.
So if people try to get in touch with me, some evenings around 8:15, there's a good chance I might be in my car headed to Van Leeuwen's because they close at 9. Get my
Okay.
fix before they shut down.
Nice. Nice. There's a place near us, Thomas Sweets, and they do blend-ins. And I think the same thing like at Dairy Queen or something. They have the ice cream and then you put in whatever you want and they mix it. And I love getting banana ice cream with Nutter Butters.
Ooh, Nutter Butters are champion. Those are so good.
Yeah.
Now, do you treat the Nutter Butter the way you treat the Oreo? Do you spin it off so that you can then
No, no,
swipe
no,
in
no,
the
no,
middle?
no, 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 no. I eat the. What am I, a farmer? I don't do that. No. And if you know that reference, I would love it, but I doubt people know that reference. Um, but I love Nutter Butters. I eat kind of half, eat it, and then I eat the other half. I'm not going to take it apart and do like the Oreo now.
You answered that question as if there was something wrong with it, but it's the same. It's a sandwich cookie, just like the Oreo is.
Oreo is round. Nutter Butter is like in the shape of a peanut. Do you know how hard it is to try to twist a peanut shape? I mean, have you tried?
That's it. We're gonna start the Nutter Butter challenge. We want people to see if they can spin it and
I will
without
buy.
breaking the cookie.
I think the supermarket's probably gonna be closed when I drive home. But tomorrow I'm gonna go buy a pack of Nutter Butters, and I'm going to show you. You can't just do it. You can't just doesn't work. Doesn't work.
That's it, folks. The Nutter Butter challenge is on. Send in your
Bring it.
videos. All right, we're heading into fall. Pumpkin spice or apple cider
For what?
for
I like to
drinks?
drink apple cider. I make a really good warm apple cider where I'll buy the apple cider, put it on the stove, put a thing of cinnamon, like a stick of cinnamon and oranges. Makes my house smell delightful and it tastes really good. Pumpkin spice, I like that in my protein smoothies. I'll make a protein smoothie with pumpkin and then add nutmeg and cinnamon because pumpkin spice is simply nutmeg and cinnamon and cloves.
Yes,
That's what pumpkin spice is. It's not pumpkin. But
you
I
don't
will do a
say.
smoothie with pumpkin, like pureed pumpkin and cloves and nutmeg and cinnamon.
If you're a big fan of apple cider, then I would recommend getting the Scratch Labs hydration mix apple cider. They just brought it back
Yeah.
in the last week or so. It's been gone for a while, but that stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah, I like that.
Especially if it's a cold day and you're on your bike and you get to swig some warm apple cider electrolytes. Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And where I live in New Jersey, we have a lot of apple places. Like we can get fresh apple cider and apple cider donuts. Oh my God, apple cider donuts are the
So good.
bomb.
So good. We went to an apple farm last year in Seattle, and oh my goodness, I had a dozen apple cider donuts, and I probably could have eaten all of them in one sitting. They were so good.
Mhm.
Now here in LA, I think the closest apple farm is like 2 or 3 hours away, but we're making the trip because you got to get them. Have
Yep.
to.
Yep.
You can only eat one type of food, flavor of food for the rest of your life. Are you going savory or sweet?
I'm probably going savory. I think as a
What
kid, I would have said sweet, but now my taste buds are starting to shift.
what meal comes to mind right away when you think of a savory meal?
Actually, the after race meal I had at Challenge Roth. Challenge Roth had the best athlete food ever. You go into the tent and they offer you oatmeal, and they had a choice between savory and sweet, and I chose savory. I don't even know what they put on it, but it was so delicious.
You've mentioned Challenge Roth twice now, and both times bratwurst with sauerkraut on a bun with mustard popped into my head.
Okay, I will never eat that. I don't like sauerkraut. I don't eat pork. If you said German pretzel, I'd be like,
I'm down with that too.
you know, I'll eat a pretzel all day long, or German brown bread. Yes.
German brown bread is so good. Like, I mean, just it's so good.
Mhm.
Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin cookie?
Chocolate chip.
Pop-Tarts, frosted or unfrosted?
Oh my God, frosted. Is it even a Pop Tart? There's no frosting.
I've yet to hear anybody say unfrosted because I can't imagine like this idea of eating cardboard being tasty.
Right.
It's hard
No,
for me to fathom.
no, strawberry Pop Tarts with the frosting on it, or the cinnamon ones. I loved those.
I'm a cookies and cream fan and a
Okay.
cherry fan for Pop-Tarts. And Pop-Tart, their Threads account posted a few days ago about putting it in the air fryer, putting a Pop-Tart in the air fryer for like 2 or 3. Yeah, exactly. That was my reaction. I was like, genius.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I happen to have a couple of cookies and cream Pop-Tarts laying around. So that might be something I'd try out. Last question for you, Pat. Thank you so much for joining me. Is tray of brownies is coming out of the oven. Are you going to the edge to get a little bit of the crust with a little bit of ooey gooey in the middle? Or are you going straight to the middle of the tray and getting all ooey gooey?
Okay, so fresh out of the oven.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going crust with a little bit of ooey gooey, because fresh out of the oven, the crust is still also a little bit ooey gooey. Now you wait a few hours and that crust becomes hard. I just want ooey gooey. And my brownies that I make have peanut butter in them and cream cheese, and it's delicious. So
Shocker. Pat's brownies include peanut butter.
I know. Who knew? Hold on one sec. I just got to show you something. I'm in my office. I have no food in my office except a jar of peanut butter. You'll notice the scrapes on it from where I
Yes.
just get a spoon and go to town.
I love it. Breaking news, folks. Pat loves peanut butter.
Who knew?
Pat, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. Every time we chat, I leave with a smile on my face and more information in my brain. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and hope people look me up and we can connect.
Absolutely. Have a
All
good
right.
night.